Hey, Clear Lake peeps, Ross England here, Clear Lake Guide Service with your Clear Lake report for 2/21/25. Boy, I was really trying to jump the gun there. It's been an interesting week. I'm going to go over the conditions real quickly, and then I'm going to just talk about what I think is going to happen here in the next month. Taking a look at weather forecasts and all that kind of nonsense. So let's start out with lake level. Lake level is currently at, rounding it off, 8.1. It's dropped a quarter of a foot in the last 4 days. So this is Friday, so probably by Saturday, the restriction of no wake zone to a quarter mile offshore will probably be lifted. You know, once it gets under 8.0, that restriction is gone. So lake level, it's good. I mean, it really looks, the lake itself looks good. As Bob has already told you, there's still stuff floating around out there. So, you know, people who aren't used to running around on this lake during these kinds of times are not used to the fact that they've really got to pay attention. And especially it's going to get you on those days that you have a little bit of chop where it makes it really hard to see some of this stuff. There's some big stuff floating around out there. So just keep that in the back of your mind. So lake level's 8.1. Water temperature, I've been out 3 times this week, and it started out with morning lows around 46, and yesterday morning low was about 47. Getting around the lake, I've seen it range anywhere between 47 degrees for morning lows up to about, I think I was in one area yesterday where we saw almost 52 degrees. Now keep in mind those are surface temps. It doesn't really mean anything to a fish that's down in 5 feet of water, you know, down on the bottom. Whatever temp it is down there is what it is. So this is just one of those little freak weather things that come through, and you know, all of a sudden it feels more spring-like than it does winter-like. But it doesn't really get down to the fish that well. Watercolor, all over the board. You know, it seems like I have to say that almost every week, but probably the biggest area that I was in, Lakeport, North Lakeport, Nice, maybe a foot of visibility, stained from runoff. You know, it's just a muddy color. It's not muddy, it's just, you know, it just has that muddy color to it. Down to even extending down as far as into the Narrows, there's still a stain down there. Got into Konocti Bay, could see 4.5 feet. I know other, you know, I think Bob reported seeing almost 5 or 6 feet down in the Redbud Arm. We didn't get that far down during the course of the week. I covered Lakeport, Nice, Lucerne, the Redbud Arm down as far as almost Monitor. And then Jim and I one day got all the way down to Rattlesnake. And I thought the water was going to be clearer down around Rattlesnake than it was. And it wasn't. I mean, there was only about a foot of visibility, at least in the part of it that we were in. So that's going to vary with very little rain in the forecast coming up. We're going to see the water clarity clean up as long as the wind stays down. So I think those are all your conditions. Upcoming activities, don't see anything this coming week, this weekend. So let's launch into yesterday. You know, I was beginning to think I had a tough day. I mean, it was a tough week. You know, I was out a couple days with clients and we struggled on both days. Honestly, Jim and I were out one day and we struggled to catch five fish. It was a decent limit, but you know, it was hard work getting them. And 4 of those fish were just Jim being stubborn about chasing them around with the scope and dogging them until, you know, one of them would bite. All those bites were in the afternoon. But yesterday, caught some obvious, what I think are obvious males, just from the body shape, the looks, how thin they were. Just typical shape of a male up on docks that were fairly shallow. And it got me to thinking, with looking at the weather here the next, you know, through this weekend, I thought, oh boy, this thing's starting. And I thought, well, you know, I kind of sat on it yesterday afternoon and spent some time thinking about it, thought, you know, I've fallen sucker for this before, where you get this one little burst of really good weather and think all of a sudden, oh boy, it's going to be on next week. Started looking at weather forecasts, and predominantly most of the weather forecasts for the month of March show at least half the days in March are morning lows in Kelseyville, which is a state park, are going to still be in the 30s. Granted, they're going to be in the upper 30s, but sometimes that translates to 34, 35 degrees sometimes here at lake level. It's like yesterday we had a pretty good frost on the roof. This morning, you know, there was still a frost. So half the days in March, the forecast says, are going to be down in the 30s. There's no 70s in the forecast. Most of the days in March are forecast to be low to mid 60s. So, and there's even a handful of dates in there that look like they're going to dip down into the 50s. Not a lot of rain in the forecast, which is fine. The lake is full, so we're in good shape that way. Doesn't, you know, and all of this can change just with one little atmospheric event, but you know, this is looking at AccuWeather long range forecasting. So what does that mean? I don't think we're going to see 60-degree water temperature, other than in some extreme backwater protected areas that catch a lot of sun. But I think what it does mean is there's going to be a pretty good extended pre-spawn in the month of March. You know, something that really lends itself to swim baits, rip baits, A-rigs if you like to throw them, swim jigs, chatterbaits, that kind of fishing. It looks like March is going to be a really good month for it, based on the weather. So, you know, some of these bays are going to start to have fish moving into them. Kind of an extended late winter move. So I look for that to be a lot more fun. You know, I'm not seeing a whole lot of guys out fishing. Obviously, I'm in the wrong places because I'm not seeing the guys catching these big bags, which is just the way it goes. But, you know, the reality is I'm talking to more people who are really struggling to catch fish. So if you're one of those guys who are out here, or ladies who are out here bombing around, and, you know, at the end of the day, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 fish, you know, it's Clear Lake being Clear Lake. The guys who are really dialed in on them and know what they're doing can go out and most days crack a good limit, and everybody else is kind of just scratching their heads, struggling around, looking for, you know, schools of 2 to 3 pound fish that honestly I'm not seeing very many of them. You know, Bob Tyler talks about, you know, having 100 fish a day with short fish, and I kind of experienced part of that one day where I got into an area and caught 7 or 8 in a row of, you know, little 10.5 to maybe 12-inch fish. So I can see how that would happen, but I'll tell you what, there's a lot of water to cover to get to one of those little patches. And from what I'm seeing, even just using my Mega Live, I can go down a lot of bank and not see a fish. So don't get exasperated. Kind of, think about those big bags and say, well, yeah, okay, they can happen. And you know what? You too can get one. It's just a matter of you just pull up to the right spot at the right time. I've been doing a lot of what I think is pulling up to the right spot, but just not figuring out what the right time is. So even I'm still struggling with it. Don't get too disappointed about it. I think March, for those of you that like to fish with live bait, I think March is going to be a good month for it this year. We've got high water. Although some of the places you like to fish them are pretty much covered up with willows from the drought years, I think it's still going to be a good bite, but you're still going to have to find fish. It's not like you can just go down any bank and pop one here, pop one there. It's just not been my experience, and it's not been the experience of a number of people I've talked to. I don't care if you're a float tuber, a kayaker, or somebody out here in your own bass boat. I'm talking to people who are all in the same boat, so to speak, that are just finding it tough. So hang in there. Look forward to having a good March up ahead of us. And I guess that's it for today. So sorry for being a little bit long-winded, but I wanted to give you a little bit of shot and some thoughts on how things are looking, looking ahead. So we will talk to you next week.